Hi guys, what's up? I'm Mandy and welcome back to my channel. It is great to have you here, whether you're returning or if you're new. I am very happy to see you at any time. So I wanted to show you this great project that I'm doing right now. We just did the series of sewing on buttons. And I actually really enjoyed it, and I really liked the fact that I put together this sort of haphazard little cover for a pillow, but I didn't put the pillow together yet. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to put together that pillow, and we're going to have this cute little pillow about this big that has Nightmare Before Christmas buttons on it. And I just adore how it looks so far. So join me and let's see how it turns out. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're starting with the button cover that I had from last time, but I also cut out an extra piece of velvet. It's more like a broadcloth, but it's got this velvet feel to it, and it actually picked up a lot of dust and dirt, which I didn't even know was on my desk, but it needs to be cleaned up. So what I'm doing is I'm just rolling some regular desk tape around my fingers, and I'm going with the grain. See, I tried to do it against the grain. It didn't work. But going with the grain, that means the line of the fabric, then that allows me to just slide the tape across it, and you can see how much extra stuff it took off of there. And see, I'm still picking stuff off of it, which is insane. But anyway, so I want to make sure that the side that I want to the outside of the pillow is facing down, because otherwise it's going to be on the inside of the pillow. I also have one edge that is not square. So, you know, it's just a for fun pillow, so I'm not being exact, but I do want it to be close to a square. So I just cut that little bit off, and I'm using this embroidery floss to stitch all of this together, and I'm going to roll that edge of the fabric over the felt. So I right now am separating this brand new skein of embroidery floss, or embroidery thread, and I want to show you that embroidery thread is not just one strand of thread. It is actually 6 small strands of thread that are put together into one thicker strand. So if you don't want that big, thick set of 6 strands, you can separate them, and I would suggest doing that. I am going to separate it into strands of 3 apiece, so I'm separating it into 2 separate parts. But one thing that you really want to be sure of is that you're not pulling them apart too fast, because if you do, then you can cause a knot in the thread because it's spun together. So as you can see, I started to pull it a little too fast. What I want to do is I want to make sure that it isn't twisting around itself, and I'm being careful to take my time. I know that it's hard to be patient sometimes, but taking your time is really worth it, believe me. So I am putting the one strand up at the top of my desk so it doesn't get in my way, and then I have the other one that I'm going to be threading. So since I have 3 strands, I've got to be careful about it fraying. I do apologize right there, I actually dropped my light. So I'm fixing that at that moment. But I'm going to need to roll the end of the embroidery thread and get it to be a little flatter. So what I've shown you as a trick in some of my previous videos on threading a needle and tying a knot like my grandma did, is that I got the end of that thread wet. Now my needle had some thread on it already, so that's what I just did, is I cut that thread off because it was knotted around the needle. Half the time what I do anymore is I have just a little bit of thread that's in the needles so that I can see them, because honestly they're very thin, they're very hard to see for me because I have blurry eyesight, and so it is difficult for me to see those needles. But I actually got the thread in the first time. I was so proud of myself. Don't feel bad if you don't. Seriously. There have been times that I've taken forever. So if you want to see how to thread a needle, the little tricks that I've got, and how to tie that knot that I just did, then please go and watch my other videos. I will have a link to those at the end of the video today. So what I'm going to be doing for you here is I am going to be doing the blanket stitch. Going through the back of that front piece of fabric that has the buttons on it, so it didn't go through both of the pieces of fabric, I want to hide the knot. So I just put it through the middle of the two, and now I'm just tacking it. So I'm going through from the front to the back, and I'm just doing this little stitch, and then you've got to make sure that your thread is not getting tangled as it goes through. And I am going to wrap it around from the back to the front. I did not put my needle through. I brought my needle around to the front. And so it's going to loop around that outside edge. And you make sure that you pull tight, or so that it doesn't leave a loop. And here I'm going to do it again, so that was my first stitch to hold things in place. And now this stitch is the first blanket stitch. So I'm going into the cloth through both pieces of fabric, right at the bottom of that rolled edge, and pulling all the way through. I have a little loop that I've left at the top, and I'm just pulling the thread through that little loop and then pulling it tight. It gives you your stitch, and then it has a sewn line that goes across the top of the blanket, the outside edge of the blanket, or in this case, pillow. So I went through from the front to the back. I put the needle and thread through that one loop, and it gave me my little line on the outside edge. So I'm going to do it again. So go through from the front, pull all the way through to the back, and I'm making sure that my thread didn't loop around the outside there. and then it goes underneath that loop and pull tight. Now we're not pulling so tight it puckers. You want to make sure that you pull tight so that it's not looped around and really loose, but you don't want to pull so tight that you either break the thread or make it pucker, so it scrunches it all together and changes the shape of it. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to continue around the corner, and I just pinched the corners so that they sort of folded in on each other, sort of like wrapping a present. It wasn't anything fancy. I am just doing this as a fun little decorated pillow. The fabrics that I chose, they're not going to fray. So that means that they won't fall apart on the edges. Whereas if I had used cotton or a polyester or something like that, then it would fray, because those are a I guess I would say it's a looser type of fabric, so it's not as thick as the felt and the velvet are. So you can see pretty well right here how that line is on the outside edge from having this blanket stitch. And that is that, and we're going to speed this up. I hope that you enjoy the rest of it.